Hiya.
Hey, you're my quickest joiner.
Listen, I'm just like, don't even know how
I
Instagram.
think you are the quickest one to ever enter the live. But thank you so much for agreeing to do the live. Obviously, as I kind of mentioned to you, I've been doing this whole legal practice area series where I kind of do Q&As with different associates in different firms who have qualified into different practice areas so that students, graduates, aspiring solicitors can kind of get a better understanding about what law is like in practice.
Yeah.
So obviously the topic of conversation today is construction, but obviously so that it is as beneficial to everyone watching as possible, we'll kind of touch on different areas as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, happy.
Great. Okay. So I think if you just start by giving everyone like a brief introduction of yourself, so like your legal journey to date, and
Yeah.
then we'll go through each thing individually.
Yeah. My name's Oyena Bunkami, of course. I am an associate in the construction team at Forsters. However, my legal journey started after studying law, LLB at the University of Leicester. I
Whoop.
applied.
No, I'm joking.
I applied for a number of TCs and I flopped most of them in terms of, didn't even hear back from firms and stuff like that. But finally got a TC at Kennedy's, which I started in 2016. And I had 4 seats there. The first seat, so Kennedy's, for those who don't know, is an insurance litigation firm. That's kind of the bread and butter of what they do. So my first seat was actually commercial litigation, just kind of commercial litigation. Second seat was insurance litigation. Third seat was another form of insurance litigation, but specifically construction projects and engineering. So that's where my initial kind of
Best was sparked.
yeah, and kind of got me wanting to do it.
Okay.
My final seat was personal injury, and yeah, less said about that, the better.
Sure.
But that was the seat I was offered. The politics of kind of getting a qualification role, that was what Kennedy's offered. So I decided to go and do construction somewhere else. Well, not pure construction insurance, because that was kind of the flavour of what they did at the time. So I was at Waitman's for 2.5 years. Had a really good time, really lovely team, lovely firm. But in that time, I realised that construction was a lot bigger than insurance, and I was putting myself into a niche really by sticking to the insurance element. So I went to Forsters, where they do contentious and non-contentious construction. So yeah, I've been for 11 months now.
You've been at Forces for 11 months. Amazing. Okay, great. So you have had quite a varied journey. So I think let's kind of do something one step at a time. So let's go back to, obviously you mentioned that you studied at Leicester. I think that's where we met everyone, just so you know, background. So Leicester. And one question that I get quite a lot generally is whether attending a non-Russell Group university hinders your ability to, succeed or to get through a certain application stage or to get a training contract. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were on, attending a non-Russell Group and if that impacted your journey at all.
I mean, obviously, Nadine, we went to uni at the same time, so what we were told, especially as young black aspiring solicitors or lawyer barristers. We were told that kind of the better the university, the better your opportunity, really. Leicester at that time was very good. I looked at the rankings recently, and I was a bit.
At that time,
standards have clearly, dropped.
yeah.
At the time, I felt like that was a very good uni to go. It was like top 15 in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't hold me back in terms of my goals. Did quite well, got a first.
Ooh, well done. Don't brush past that. Well done.
No, because it was part of the journey, but I think the biggest thing I'll always say, and now it's quite important, and I think now a lot more aspiring black solicitors and barristers know this, is work experience and getting experience. And going to fairs and going to networking things and going to open days at firms and getting involved from early, putting that on your CV is invaluable because you need to know how they think, right? If you're going to go into a corporate space, you need to know how to present yourself. You know how to deal with clients and the like. So yeah, I think going to Leicester was great for me. I met amazing people, had amazing experiences, was very varied. So I don't think the going to a new Russell Group uni was detrimental. Obviously, if you could go to an Oxford or Cambridge, that's always
going to be,
I'm not going to stay here.
Yeah.
But Leicester didn't harm me, no.
Okay, good. Okay, good to know and that's always my thing as well. I think the university that you attend is one thing, but the grades that you get and what you make out of that experience is more important. So, each to their own. But okay, great. So you finished university and then, as you said, you got your training contract at Kennedy's and you did a number of different seats.
Yeah.
What type of jobs and tasks did you have in each of those seats? Like, what was the work like as a trainee?
So kind of as a trainee, you come in and you're just overwhelmed. You've worked in a law firm, so I think for you, it'll be when you do start your training contract, it'll be very different.
It won't be too much of a shock, but I feel like it will still be a shock because,
yeah,
a
young'un, like, this was my first proper job, like, well, second, but you do a lot of admin. So I was in commercial contracts or whatever it was called, I can't remember. And I used to review. I just remember reviewing loads of like transaction documents, JVs, joint venture agreements, reviewing a lot of, I used to do a lot of data room kind of editing. So if you had deals going on for commercial entities, you'd have to get involved in like assembling the data rooms, keeping track of them. Used to take loads of attendance notes. So I used to attend meetings with Notepad. Used to do a lot of kind of court filings and the like. Yeah. Those are my kind of initial tasks in the first seat. Second seat, insurance litigation. I got to do a lot around Brexit, which was quite good. So that was the Brexit regulation issues. So I was doing a lot of research to do with passporting of companies, working across the EU, what it meant to have a headquarters in the UK versus Brussels or France or Germany. Did what we call subrogation, which is where insurers will pay out for an insured's loss and then try and recoup from the third party that they think caused the loss.
Yeah.
So dealt with a lot of loss adjusters in that role, dealt with a lot of insurers as well. And in my third seat, projects, engineering, construction, obviously got opened up to kind of construction projects and how lawyers get involved in putting together documentation, appointments, contracts, and then the disputes, which I love.
So you're more the litigation.
I am a litigator,
yeah, okay.
And final seat was personal injury, so dealt with kind of claims for there's some like serious brain injury stuff, some early childbirth stuff.
I imagine it's quite intense, right?
It was, and ironically, because it was my fourth seat, I ended up kind of collating all my experience and doing really, really well in that. And they offered me a role there, but I just never saw myself as a PI lawyer. So.
Fair enough. Okay, so what was it about construction that you liked then? Why was construction for you?
Construction for me is like the lifeblood of society in terms of everything that we do is through infrastructure. All the places that are important to our lives, the trains, railways, offices, prets.
It all has to be built.
Clubs, bars, like it all has to be built, right? Accommodation, homes. So I felt like I like the fact that you had these big projects as well. And I like the fact that you had different kinds of construction professionals. So architects and surveyors and dealing with, I had an acoustics expert on one property, it was university accommodation. So they had to make sure that, you couldn't hear the next flat because it's always very loud. So you just meet all kinds of experts that you never really would have thought of before. So yeah, for me, construction is quite interesting. It's quite technical. A lot of people don't realize the technicality of the legislation, the law, construction law itself can be quite technical, but it's very interesting, and it's allows you to solve problems and analyze, which I love to do.
Sure. No, I'd agree. So when I was doing real estate, like you said, I liked the kind of practical side of, you know, you're working on something where something tangible is going to be built. Someone's going to be living there. Someone's, do you know what I mean? Like it's something you can actually
Yeah,
see.
you can point to stuff. There's things in London that I walk past or get on the G, and I'm like, oh wow, you know,
Oh,
I
on, yeah.
have I dealt with this, you know, so it's quite cool. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Okay, so with construction being it, obviously you did mention that there wasn't really a place in the construction team for you during your training contract or when you got to the qualification stage. So obviously, like a lot of associates at that time, you then find a firm who can accommodate your preference or qualification.
Yeah.
So what was it like then, having spent the 2 years, getting quite settled into what a corporate commercial lawyer is meant to look like in that firm, then going to another firm and having to kind of rewire how you do things and who you interact with?
I've become very adaptable, I think.
Okay.
And for me, I think being a millennial, like you rightly said, in the past, maybe I would have taken that personal injury job. And then 5 years down the line, I'm just in a job that I don't really like.
Yeah.
Going to Waitman's was, for me, actually fairly seamless because they're very similar type of firms. So Waitman's and Kennedy's operate in the same space. So the main thing for me was the culture. And I found that at Waitman's, it was a lot more collaborative.
Okay.
I found that, you know, there was more of an emphasis on delivering your targets at Kennedy's. So when I came in like, you know, always like,
Focus, get the job done, build what you need to build.
but then obviously you need to engage with people and really build up my client side skills actually.
Mm-hmm.
At Waitman's, they really let me get involved in client work, and that developed me as a true associate, not just a solicitor. So yeah, those were the main kind of things I had to get with. But yeah, it was a lovely place. I left there for career reasons, really. It was a case of if I stayed there, I'd have just been doing a particular type of work repeatedly. And I just wanted to be an actual construction lawyer on the contentious and non-contentious side as well.
Okay. So with that in mind, then let's break down construction more specifically. Yeah. So what type of work would you do as a construction associate, both in terms of, you know, the maybe transactional side and then the more litigious side?
Yeah. So what Nadine refers to there, what you're referring to is non-contentious and contentious.
That's what I meant. And you know, coming to me and I was like, what is it?
What's it called? Yeah, no, you're right. So there is a distinction. And the main reason I joined forces because I was able to do both. Okay. And very rarely do you get to do both. Now, like I said, I have a disputes background primarily. So as a typical kind of construction lawyer, what you're doing is putting together contracts and appointments. So you're appointing members of the professional team. You have to appoint the architect, the engineer, structural engineer, mechanical engineer, civil engineer. You have to appoint the cladding people. So you're doing this whole suite of contractual documents. That's what we call non-contentious work, because that's about appointing, you know, transactionally, essentially, professional team and contractor.
Right. Yeah.
And we often deal with real estate. So you were in real estate, so we would often like liaise with them on an agreement for a lease, for example, if we need to give up what's called a warranty. So a warranty would be from whoever's building the property, so like an architect or surveyor, to the tenant to say, if anything, if X, Y, Z goes wrong, we promise essentially that we will do X, Y, and Z. So we do work with other teams, even in terms of financing as well, you know, putting together the contracts, putting together money. So that's the non-con side, as we call it. And then the contentious side is what happens when things go wrong, right? So essentially we've put everything in place, the project's up and running, and then COVID hits. The contractor doesn't want to attend site, works get delayed. That's what we call delay. So that's a delay dispute. Or for example, I'm a contractor, price of steel is too high. I want some more time to kind of consolidate my other projects. Because imagine, like, if I'm a large steel, if I'm a large contractor, I have a number of projects. I'm not just working on your.
Yeah, of course.
I might want to like take money off another project, bring it to your project, blah blah blah. I'll ask for an extension of time, right?
Okay.
And that means I need X more time to actually do the project. The employer might not be happy to grant that time because for example, if they need the property for a particular reason, or they needed to do a commercial they have tenants moving in. They can't extend for like a year.
Pieces, yeah, literally.
These are the two main kind of disputes that you find: extension of time and delay. So resolving that can take a number of avenues. So you can have what we call without prejudice discussions. So that's essentially outside of the gaze of the court. Before you get to issuing a claim, they'll say, oh, we're unhappy about X, Y, and Z. We think X amount is in dispute. Then lawyers will be called in to look at the contract and look at payment provisions. And then you try and settle it. Or you could get to mediation stage where you have a mediator, the parties, the lawyers, the insurers, blah, blah, blah. Or you can go to adjudication if it's a single issue dispute in a construction contract. So a lot of the contracts will say you have to go to adjudication, right? And adjudication is one issue. You appoint an adjudicator, 28 days, bish, bash, bosh, you have your decision. Or finally, litigation. You go to court. And that's very expensive. So yeah, that's where you would go to trial and all that.
It can be quite public, right?
Yeah, and this is the thing. Good lawyers don't go to court. Like, good lawyers don't go to court. You settle, usually.
It's at that stage, yeah.
It's what people don't realize. You're dealing with commercial entities. They spend X, Y, Z monies for a 2-year court case.
Yeah, and their reputation as well. Like people they don't want to look like, oh, they've been unreasonable in this situation, or do you know what I mean? Or because of their actions, this has been the effect. Like reputation is a big thing for companies.
Indeed, and I think until you get into the corporate space and you work in a corporate environment, you don't actually realize that a bad name is really scary. It's really
yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of like a typical profile of a construction.
Okay, cool. So I think in terms of people who are thinking about what areas of law they might be interested in and how they can gain more information or keep up to date with their specific area of law, are there any resources or websites where people can see what is going on in the construction industry or the real estate industry that you would recommend?
Yeah, so we have the Property Law Journal. Yours truly wrote an article recently. I'm not.
You just like sliding these things in. It's fine. You can clap.
So yeah, Property Law Journal. I wrote an article on professional indemnity. Check it out in the construction industry, which is huge because post Grenfell and the tragedy there and the loss of lives, we are seeing the biggest change in construction.
Absolutely.
And regulation since the World War, like
absolutely
World War II to be precise. So in the last 70 or whatever years, this is huge. And there's something called the Building Safety Bill, which has come out as a result of the review, the Dame Judith Hackett review into construction practices, fire safety, of course, and things like that. So I would point anyone to go and read on, to look at the Building Safety Bill and publications around that. Any top law firm with a construction focus, such as Forsters, or such as any of the others in the market, I won't be naming names, can go there, and if you type in construction, and they will have articles. So that's a good way. So if you're looking to apply to a firm and you're interested, you think I might like construction, I might be interested there. Go to the firm's articles, because speaking from the inside, Nadine, you know this. Regularly, firms are looking to put out kind of topical issues. They're looking to discuss issues. They want to raise their profile. So if you go into the market and you target a particular firm and you go for construction articles, it's very good. Like I said, the government website, if you look at Department of Housing, they always have good articles on there. If you look at kind of Law Careers Net, aspiring solicitors, all these kind of even Legal Cheek, sometimes you might spot one.
Yeah, Legal Cheek is good as well.
So yeah, if you want to kind of get articles, that's a good avenue to pursue.
No, definitely, because I think it's really important when you're applying to a law firm that you know why you're applying, and if, for example, construction is something they have a big focus on, or even real estate, because construction and real estate, they're all kind of in the same bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely good to understand what is going on around that, so that when you go into an interview or an assessment center, you have that knowledge. Because I think for me, throughout my legal journey, I would be like, yeah, I really want to apply to this law firm, but I don't really know what's going on.
Like, you need to go and find out, read up on them, and they're human. Like, they write stuff, they're interested in stuff, and every firm is different in its culture. So if you research, like, it'll be worth it, definitely.
Definitely. Okay, so we've spoken about a bit about your legal journey and like why construction. I think my next question would be then, what are the things that you think you've learned along your legal journey? So it could be at any stage, it could be in practice, it could be just while you're trying to navigate into practice. What are the key things that you've learned?
So I would say that the first thing that I've learned is the importance of continual development. Even partners are learning, and they will. The only way to improve is to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't think you will be substandard or you'll be looked down on as not knowing what to do, because it's worse to carry on and get it wrong. And as lawyers, our mistakes are very, very costly. And
Make a mistake and don't tell anyone. I think that's the worst thing you can do.
so as a trainee, I learned very quickly, you know, oh, you might miss out a page of printing or something silly. Just be honest. And secondly, I think develop your craft, and it's what we said about reading articles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a bit of a nerd, so I will watch questions.
Read on the way to work, when you choose.
You know, read Construction Today. I would read, oh, I hear that the government's passing a bill on building safety. I would go and look at the manuscript from the House hearing. And you don't have to go that deep. I'm a bit, yeah. Legal text, read up on legal text. And also, I think, engage on LinkedIn and things like that. You have a lot of resource there. If you're following the right people, you always see the right articles. You always see the right engagement. So I think that would be my advice. Develop yourself. And also, I think I would say have belief in your ability. You are where you are for a reason. And I've come across a lot of people on social media who might come from minority backgrounds, who might feel like, you know, there's not enough representation, which is unfortunately the truth in the corporate space. And this isn't even legal. I'm talking about finance, talking about HR, anything. Yeah. So believe in your ability. Like, you're there for a reason. You made it there for a reason. You're intelligent. You're blessed, and just have that self-belief. Yeah, just work hard and be diligent. If you're diligent in what you're doing, the fruits will come. Yeah.
Resilient, focus. Like, no, definitely, I definitely echo that, because I feel like you said, because of, you know, maybe the lack of representation, because of maybe the lack of mentorship in some areas, because of general rejection that you get in a lot of these spaces, especially when it comes to law, just because it's so competitive, you can really start to doubt yourself. And I've had a chat with a couple people, and they're just like, how did you stay motivated? And I think, like you said, like, as well as encouraging yourself, I think it's really important to kind of protect your energy. So whether it's, you know, you're feeling a bit down, you know, you don't want to be scrolling on LinkedIn and seeing everyone's congratulations if you're not quite in that moment.
Yeah, no, sometimes LinkedIn can be,
sometimes it can really feed
a lot.
What you thought you had. So, but like you said, it is a really important networking tool, because there are so many people on there that can help you if you reach out to the right people and ask the right questions. So everything has pros and cons, eh?
Indeed, yeah, agreed.
One question that I did get that we kind of touched on a little bit, but I just want to touch on a little bit more in terms of like settling into a new law firm. Like you said, you did say, you know, you're quite adaptable. You kind of just got into it and got stuck in. What advice would you give to people who maybe don't have experience of kind of had jumped around firms or gained that confidence in the firm they were in before? How would you say that they should kind of try and navigate and build up that confidence in a new firm?
I think the first thing is to, like, if you are going to move, do it for the right reason.
Okay.
Because that will justify to you, you know, when things aren't going quite as well as what you might have hoped, like, the reason was a good reason.
Yeah.
And I had a pretty difficult transition because I was working from home. Obviously, in the midst of, I changed jobs literally, December last year. So, like, peak lockdown. And creating that kind of osmosis by learning situation, which I quite like. So, you watch, what I mean by that is, sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Do you want to define it, everyone?
We all know what osmosis is, right? We all know what osmosis is. It's
Let's define it, because
passing of
no one's going to say, oh, I don't know. So
legal osmosis for me is, as a trainee, sat next to an associate, observing the way they work and learning by observing, learning by my proximity to them. So by seeing how they do things, not necessarily copying, but you just learn how to do things in a better manner. And as an associate, that applies to when you see senior associates, senior associate when you see partners. So
yeah,
learning by observation, learning by being close to them. You might hear them on the phone talking to a client, so you learn how to talk to clients. You pick tips on, you know, you might learn how they maybe even correct
question, like.
Yeah. So that's what I call legal osmosis. But I think that's the biggest part. I would always say, you know, thankfully, thank God, kind of with vaccination and all the measures and all the trauma, we seem to finally be getting back to going into the office. So I would always kind of suggest that if you can, at least get a couple of days FaceTime with those that you work with and build that rapport, really. And the second thing I think is just to be aware of the job title, sorry, the scope of your job, right? Don't focus on the job title, rather. Focus on the scope of your job. What are you asked to do? And if you do what you do properly, no one can put you down. As long as you're doing what you're supposed to do and you're putting the right effort in, then, you know, I think those are the things that help you settle in. And also, you know, come with an open attitude. Like, some people go into a job and they're like, I'm not big on oversharing, but you do need to be cordial. You know, you do need to get, I know that's a big thing on, you know, like Black Twitter or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I definitely in the non-oversharing camp, but you need to have topics. Like, you have buzzwords, you know how you just talk quickly about your weekend, just to develop, because otherwise, you know, if you need something from someone, how are you going to ask them if you haven't even developed a rapport?
Any conversation, the first time you're interacting is when you need something from someone. Even in our personal life, we all know that doesn't go down well. So it's exactly the same in the professional world.
Yeah. So those would be my keys, I think. I think also just be someone that people want to work with. So,
what I was going to add at the end. I think it's so important. I think
exactly.
To bear in mind is, like you said, like, you're always learning, so people don't expect you to know everything, and people don't treat you like that. However, people do like to be around people that they like to work with. So if they feel like, yeah, like, I can get on with this person, I don't mind spending a couple of hours in the office with them, your relationship naturally builds, and it just makes your working environment nicer. As you said, with the pandemic, it is a little bit harder because a lot more people are taking advantage of working from home as much as they can. But when you can get that FaceTime, go in, meet up with people. Like, I think since the office opened back up for me, I'm in the office like 3 times a week, and that's not what I originally wanted. I was like, kind of liking working from home. But I think having met so much people virtually, I'm like, okay, now that everything's opened up, I need people to see me in person. I need them to connect with me in person, because I think that that's really how you get far. The more people connect with you, the more they give you the type of work that you want, the more that they invite you to things, the more you just kind of feel part of the overall culture.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But I don't really have much else to add. I think
sorry.
But, you know, you've hit spot
on. Okay, great. So one question that's come in is around the construction space. And let me just reread it because I've just forgotten.
Accuracy.
Of course. Okay, so the question is essentially asking the things that you learn about construction law. Was it something that you did prior to starting your job, or is construction law something that you learn a lot on job? So, for example, you know, if you do a banking seat, you may do banking on the LPC, so you go in all your stuff already. Was construction like that, or was it a lot more on the job training?
It's on the job. There's no construction law LBC module. I did, I did insurance, I did maritime, I did international trade, I did obviously your staples of, you're forced to do business, I think. Business, criminal, what's that thing where you act, where you have to do like the advocacy, I think, or something.
Yeah, all of those, yeah. Solicitors, accounts, like all of those core modules.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a very on the job. You have to do it, and you have to go in and be trained in it, and you do pick it up. And it's one of these things that the more you do it, the more you gain understanding of it. Like I said, there's a number of statutes, there's a number of principles. So construction, as we all know, is about building and developing.
Yeah.
And constructing. Use a tautology. However, if you're dealing with disputes, for example, it's either contractual, tortious, or statutory claim. So it's either a breach in contract, a breach in tort, or a breach of the statute. So
do you want to give examples of those? Give us examples.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I act for a large construction company, and I'm helping the employer to build a number of hotels.
Okay.
Whilst I was building that, I erected a number of cladding that doesn't match up with the building regulations.
Mm-hmm.
I also did not put enough fire stopping in between rooms. There's no compartmentation of fire in each room. The design is flawed, and as a result, remedial works will cost £10 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just, I've just given you a kind of
yeah.
So let's say I'm acting for the employer. So I was the one that asked this architect to design these buildings for us. Architects probably got professional indemnity insurance. So that's insurance that covers your professional activities as an architect in the course of your job. So if you're ever sued, then it will kick in. And usually it's like £5 million, I believe. So as the architect, you get this letter of claim. Now, the letter of claim will break it down into 3 different angles. Contractually, in your contract of appointment, so you're appointed by the employer, you would have had an appointment with the contractor. There'll be a main contractor who supervises architects, surveyors, everyone.
Main contractor will kind of supervise everyone's different roles.
So the building contract will be between the main contractor and us, the employer. There's an appointment of the architect specifically. The architect will have breached that contractually on the grounds that the design didn't make up with the approved fire regulations, doesn't last 60 minutes, when there's a fire, the cladding's crap, blah, 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 blah. So there will be contractual provisions. I'll say the architect will act with reasonable skill and care to make sure that they meet X or Y standard.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into the regulations.
No.
They've breached their contract by the design not meeting that standard. They have breached their contract. Secondly is the law of tort. As we know, there's something called the tort of negligence, and that's common law. So it's the idea of I don't know how many people remember from tort law now, that as a professional, you have to act to a reasonable standard expected of your profession. So as an architect, they'll say your design was negligent in XYZ areas, therefore you failed as a reasonably competent architect to meet the standards expected of you.
Yeah, in that role.
The tort. So you've breached the law of tort. Finally, is statutory, right? So statutory is, as the name implies, statutory regulations govern fire safety. So we have something called the CDM, which is the design contractors design regulations, which basically is like health and safety, essentially. So they'll say because the building would catch fire because of your defective design, you've breached CDM. Or they'll say because you've breached the actual government regulations on fire, that's a breach of statutory regulation. So that's the 3 different ways
Yeah.
that one architect is in trouble. So if they don't get on one,
be in trouble of all three at the same time, or would one party try to get them on one thing, and if that doesn't work, they'll get them on another thing? Like,
you would always throw all three.
Okay, and see which sticks.
Yeah. Well, so they're screwed one way or another. So the way that it works is that usually their breach triggers each of those three limbs.
Okay.
The fact that their design hasn't met the standard for fire safety will trigger a breach of contract, a breach of court, and a statutory breach. Now, each form of litigation or avenue or cause of action, as we say, might have a different threshold. So contractually, very low. Once you breach that contract, once you breach the clause that says the design must be XYZ, you've breached it.
Yeah.
In tort, you need to establish duty, breach, cause, and then loss, right? Yeah. So you have to prove all four. So that's a different threshold, slightly higher than contractual. Because contractual is just, you breach this.
Yeah.
Or we build a case. And then statutory, the statute might set out the parameters. So it might say, for example, under fire regs, it has to meet a particular 60 minutes. It has to be able to burn for 60 minutes, right? But then there might be a way for you to achieve that through like fire stopping or fire hazards.
Like
another way. So it's whether or not you were able to establish that or not.
Yeah.
Those are the three causes of action that you would usually see in the construction disputes matter.
I have another question that came through. And it was, how did you find the jump from being a construction trainee to a construction associate?
So I never trained as a construction trainee. So
Okay.
For those who are right at the start of the stream, I did insurance. That was my background until my current job.
Yeah.
I did construction insurance though. So for me, the jump was from leaving the insurance mindset to what we call a commercial construction mindset. So the idea that you're building to develop, or you're building to for a purpose, rather than defending claims for construction professionals, which is what I used to do in my previous role. So it was definitely a jump for me in terms of construction contracts, I think was the biggest thing. So the JCT, FIDIC, NEC3, go and Google them. I'm not going to go into those. They're forms of contract, and it's like understanding how contracts are put together for these projects to be developed.
Okay, so my question then would be, how hard was it for you to sell that you wanted to go into the construction type of work that you're in now, if that's not something that you trained in? Did they a natural flow from the information that you would have got, or how was it?
Yeah, so, well, essentially you're asking me how I interviewed. So I was doing construction insurance.
Yeah.
So and I was doing construction insurance litigation. So like I said, my constant is that I'm a litigator. So those skills, for anyone that does civil litigation in the UK, those are congruent across different sectors. So the ways that a CCMC works, the way that a pre-trial hearing works is the same.
Yeah, okay.
High court. So it's just the subject matter that differs. So because I was doing construction insurance, I was adjacent to construction projects, and I was able to explore and explain my the crossover skills that I had, essentially. Yeah.
No, I think transferable skills, regardless of whether you're at qualification stage or just applying, is important. And I guess you've shown that you were able to kind of demonstrate how your interests and your skills developed in one area. That's very to the area you're interested in.
Yeah.
That is good. I think that's all the questions that have come through to me directly. But yes, if anyone has any questions, quickly now. Quickly. But no, that's been super interesting. Thank you so much for joining us. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to say, if you want to plug your contact information, if anyone has any other questions with regards to Forsters or any of the previous firms you've worked at or construction.
Yeah, my name's Oyinogunkami. My name's on the poster. Search me out on LinkedIn. and happy to answer any questions in the DMs. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to plug, really. Just
No, that's fine. LinkedIn
keep
works.
yourself and let's. I'd like to see much more diverse profession, and I think we are getting there. And it's especially at the very top, people like Nadine now getting
Not at the top yet, but one day.
big firms. So no, those are the kind of you know those are the kind of incursions that we need to make, really. Yeah, no, I'm seeing people raising their hands.
Oh, I think everyone's just saying hi.
Oh, right. Oh, sorry. I'm having a tell moment right there. Sorry, I don't know.
Seeing as we're on the topic,
Yeah.
what more do you think should be done, can be done for us to increase more diversity within the profession? Seeing as it's also Black History Month, why not?
Yeah. I mean, accessibility, I think,
Okay.
big thing, because when we were at uni, for example, you had to. There's very kind of straight line, wasn't there? You had to go for an open day, do a vac scheme. If you don't get the TC, try and get the TC off the vac scheme.
Yeah.
If you off the vac scheme, try and apply directly the next year. And yeah, we're just shooting up 20, 25 applications, and there was just, yeah, most of them were not hitting.
Not hitting at all.
At all. But I think things are better now in terms of awareness, because there are a lot of very, very intelligent people of color, young black students, people from minority backgrounds as well. And I think that HRs in general, their eyes have been opened, to say there are people who can actually who can do this job well, and you just need to give them a shot.
Yeah.
I think blind CVs are actually not a bad idea. I know Clifford Chance runs that. I don't know. I think some of the other firms do.
Yeah, a couple of firms do blind CVs.
I
Yeah.
think to at least give people the opportunity, and because some people might have unconscious biases, it's not their fault. They just or whatever. So I think that's quite important. I think also what we're doing now is very important, showing people that you can have a professional career as a corporate. It is possible. It is doable. There are people doing it. Because when you see people like you, I think there's nothing like that to reinforce in you that you can do it. So yeah, I think campaigns as well. The work that you're doing is amazing. That was why I decided to come on, because you've worked really hard to get to where you are, and you're giving back in a big way. I thought if I can just spare some time, just to jump in alive, why wouldn't I?
I really appreciate you taking the time, and I think throughout my journey, it was definitely important to me that I kind of explored a number of different areas of law, spoke to a number of different lawyers so I could figure out if law was for me, if it was for me, what type of area of law, what the lawyers actually do. All that type of stuff is really important, because it's important for your own personal journey development, but it's also important when you get in front of a lawyer and they ask you why law, or why commercial law, or why our firm. They want to know that you know the work that they do, you know the type of clients that they have, and you know where you would fit into an organization like them. And so lives like this kind of allow people to kind of dissect what law is.
Yeah, that's
it. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for the platform as well. And yeah, keep on doing what you're doing. Yes, I think, like I said, it's needed, and it's good to see someone actually, take action and provide a platform.
Oh, that's flattery. But no, thanks, Oyin, and thank you to everyone who has been in the live. But yeah, I appreciate it. If you have any more questions for me or Oyin, you know how to contact us, and have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thanks, Nadine.
Bye.